The Battle of Munda, fought in 45 BCE, was the last and most decisive conflict of Julius Caesar's civil war, marking the final defeat of the Pompeian forces. The battle took place in southern Spain, a region that had long been a stronghold of Pompey the Great's supporters. After Caesar's victory at Pharsalus in 48 BCE and Pompey's subsequent assassination, the Pompeian faction was left fragmented but not entirely broken. Pompey's sons, Gnaeus Pompeius and Sextus Pompeius, took up their father's cause and rallied the remaining supporters in Hispania, modern Spain, determined to continue the resistance against Caesar. The Battle of Munda would see the end of this opposition. By early 45 BCE, Caesar had nearly consolidated his power over the Roman world. However, the Pompeians still posed a significant threat in Hispania, where they had gathered a formidable force of around 50,000 troops, including veterans from previous campaigns and local Spanish levies. The Pompeians had chosen their battleground carefully. They occupied a strong defensive position in Munda, a town surrounded by rugged terrain and hills that gave them the advantage of the high ground. Caesar, commanding an army of about 40,000 men, including 8 veteran legions, was determined to put an end to the civil war once and for all. The campaign had been difficult. The Pompeians had harassed Caesar's forces using guerrilla tactics, disrupting supply lines and ambushing detachments. But Caesar, with his characteristic persistence and strategic genius, pressed on. As Caesar's army approached Munda, both sides prepared for the decisive confrontation. The Pompeians, led by Gnaeus Pompeius, were well positioned on a ridge, which provided them with a strong defensive advantage. Their forces were also bolstered by the presence of Titus Labienus, a former loyal lieutenant of Caesar, who had defected to the Pompeian side earlier in the war. Labienus was an experienced and capable commander, and his defection had been a significant blow to Caesar. Now, he commanded the Pompeian cavalry and played a crucial role in the defence of Munda. Caesar, on the other hand, was fully aware that his army would have to fight uphill against a well-entrenched enemy. It was a dangerous situation, one where the advantage lay heavily in the hands of the Pompeians. But Caesar had no choice. He needed to engage them. The civil war had already dragged on for years, and a decisive victory here would finally bring it to an end. For the Pompeians, this was their last stand. Failure at Munda would mean the complete collapse of their cause. The battle began with Caesar's legions advancing uphill toward the Pompeian positions. The terrain was difficult, and the Pompeians poured a relentless barrage of projectiles, arrows, slings and javelins onto the advancing Roman soldiers. Despite the intense pressure, Caesar's veterans, battle-hardened from years of campaigning, pushed forward. However, the uphill assault took its toll. Caesar's soldiers struggled to maintain momentum, and as the battle raged on, they began to falter. The Pompeians, seeing an opportunity to break Caesar's lines, launched several counterattacks. Labienus, commanding the Pompeian cavalry, led these attacks with precision, causing significant disruption in Caesar's ranks. At one point, it seemed as though the battle might turn in favour of the Pompeians. Caesar's forces, exhausted and demoralised by the unrelenting attacks from above, began to lose ground. Caesar, sensing the critical nature of the situation, made a bold and decisive move. Despite his age, he was in his mid-50s at the time, he donned his distinctive red cloak, the mark of a Roman general, and rode to the front lines. Caesar's presence on the battlefield electrified his soldiers. Seeing their general leading from the front, they rallied and redoubled their efforts. With renewed determination, Caesar's legions pressed forward once more, engaging the Pompeians in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The fighting was intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. Slowly but surely, Caesar's forces began to gain ground, pushing the Pompeians back toward their fortified positions. However, the battle remained fiercely contested. Caesar's soldiers had not yet broken through the Pompeian lines, and the outcome was still uncertain. At this crucial juncture, Caesar ordered his cavalry to strike the flanks of the Pompeian army. This maneuver, executed with precision, created a gap in the Pompeian lines. Caesar's legions quickly exploited this breach, driving a wedge into the heart of the Pompeian defences. The Pompeians, now under pressure from both the front and the flanks, began to lose cohesion. Caesar's troops surged forward, breaking through the enemy lines and overwhelming the Pompeian defenders. The Pompeian army, once so formidable, began to disintegrate under the relentless assault. Gnaeus Pompeius, realizing that the battle was lost, attempted to flee the battlefield. However, Caesar's cavalry pursued him and his men relentlessly. Thousands of Pompeian soldiers were cut down as they fled, and the once proud army of Pompey the Great was utterly destroyed. Gnaeus Pompeius managed to escape the battlefield, but his respite was short-lived. Caesar's forces tracked him down in the weeks following the battle, and he was captured and executed. His brother, Sextus Pompeius, also fled, but continued to resist Caesar's rule for a few more years. Sextus eventually became a notorious pirate, harassing Roman shipping in the Mediterranean before being captured and killed. The Battle of Munda was one of Caesar's bloodiest and hardest-fought victories. The Pompeians had put up a fierce resistance, and for a time it had seemed as though they might succeed in turning the tide of the war. However, Caesar's leadership, tactical genius, and the loyalty of his veterans ultimately prevailed. The battle marked the end of organised opposition to Caesar's rule and brought the civil war to a close. For Caesar, the victory at Munda was both a personal and political triumph. He returned to Rome as the undisputed master of the Roman world, hailed as a hero by the people and granted numerous honours by the Senate. Among these was the title of Dictator Perpetuo, or Dictator for Life, a title that would soon have dire consequences. The concentration of power in Caesar's hands, coupled with his decision to accept the title of Dictator for Life, alarmed many in the Senate, who feared that he intended to dismantle the Republic and establish a monarchy. This fear would eventually lead to his assassination on the Ides of March in 44 BCE, just a year after his victory at Mundi. The Battle of Munda also had significant long-term consequences for the Roman state. With the Pompeians defeated, there were no longer any serious rivals to Caesar's power. The Republic, which had already been weakened by years of civil war, was effectively dead. Although Caesar's assassination would briefly throw the Roman world into chaos, it did not restore the Republic. Instead, Caesar's death paved the way for his adopted heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus, to rise to power. Octavian would go on to establish the Roman Empire, bringing an end to the Republic and inaugurating a new era of imperial rule. For Caesar's soldiers, the victory at Munda was the culmination of years of loyalty and service. These men had followed Caesar through some of the most challenging campaigns in Roman history, from the conquest of Gaul to the civil war against Pompey. They had fought on battlefields across the Mediterranean, from the plains of Pharsalus to the deserts of North Africa. The battle-hardened veterans who had stood by Caesar through thick and thin were now witness to his ultimate triumph. They had helped secure his position as the most powerful man in the Roman world, and in return they were richly rewarded. Many of Caesar's soldiers were given land, titles and wealth as a reward for their service. The Battle of Munda is often overshadowed by other, more famous battles in Caesar's career, such as Pharsalus and Thapsus, but it remains one of the most important engagements in Roman history. It marked the final defeat of the Pompeian faction and the end of the civil war, but it also signalled the end of the Republic. With no rivals left to challenge his authority, Caesar's victory at Munda paved the way for the establishment of the Roman Empire, an empire that would endure for centuries.